So I was like in a new world, and all the problems that I saw in the business world, or all the issues that I saw in the business world, I found answers in mythology. And it was very natural to me. It was very easy, the obvious patterns. So I started writing about this in newspapers. And the newspaper, it happened to reach the hands of a gentleman called Kishore Biyani, who started Big Bazaar and the Future Group. So he met me and he spoke to me, and he was asking me about patterns, and I kept explaining to him patterns of storytelling and patterns of, for example, I had a whole presentation on the Hindi film posters for the last 50 years versus Oscar award-winning films from Hollywood, and I was saying, this is how Hollywood thinks, this is how India thinks. And it was quite crazy, which everybody thought was amusing. But this gentleman said, what are you doing? I said, I am a consultant with Ernst & Young. He said, bakwas kya kar rahe ho? Join me. So I said, what will I do? He said, pata nahi, tum join kar lo. So I said, I'm not going to waste Ernst & Young partnership right there, and I'm not going to go there. So he did something very nice. He offered me 3 times my salary. And I discovered that it was a job without a job description, without key performance indicators, without KRA, just a payslip. So yeah, it was wow, but it took me 6 months to trust him. Kishore Biyani is a Marwadi businessman. So I trust the business instinct of this community very well. I worked with them for a long time, I know them well. And I said, if he sees value in me, I must be bringing something to the table, or I'm a complete idiot. So I took a plunge, and it's been an interesting journey for the last 3 years, because what I've been doing basically is asking very fundamental questions about business, economics, politics. Very, very fundamental. You see, when you tell any subject in this world, if I say business, where does this knowledge come from? Entrepreneurship, we use this word. Where does this word come from? Where does this knowledge come from? And it always comes from Europe or America. So the world's first corporation is what? The East India Company. We forget that the first corporation is the East India Company. So all knowledge of business as we know it comes from Europe and America. And I started tracing the history of this. And you understand that it comes, the first MBA comes from Harvard, 1921, 28. It's not very clear, the details are not very clear. And everything that you read in management, now because I was studying mythology, remember, management is this, and mythology seems like a bizarre world, and I would see the pattern. Now, anybody who works with Excel sheets, how many people work with Excel sheets over here? And what's the best thing about an Excel sheet? It's something called a pivot table. It's about patterns. And you start seeing patterns in everything. If you start learning the art of seeing patterns, you suddenly realize there's a pattern that management follows. So every time they would start a business, they would say you have to have a vision statement, mission statement, you need to have a target, you need to have a set of processes, then you need to align with these processes. So it sounded very nice on paper, but I said, I've heard this somewhere else. And suddenly I realized I had heard this in the Bible, in the Exodus. The notion of the promised land, far, far away, beyond the ocean, beyond the wilderness. And to get there, you have to follow the prophet and align with the commandments. The pattern was uncannily similar. Then I looked at Indian stories and I said, where is the promised land? Is there a mention of a promised land anywhere? No, it's not. There is no promised land. Then I heard a word called innovator, and I started reading the titles of books of all the CEOs, the top successful guys, which I always mention every time. And they talk, and the language used to describe the innovator who does something spectacular. And I read about their life and the way the author has written it. And suddenly you say, hey, there's another pattern over here. Where have I seen this pattern? Of course, Greek mythology, in the Iliad, in the Odyssey. Again, linear. It talks about individuals who do something spectacular. And they become heroes, so heroic that they become gods. And they have a special place for them in heaven called Elysium. If you go to Paris, there's a road called Champs-Élysées. That's Elysium. It's meant for the people who are great, who are above others, the outlier. And suddenly I said, that's Greek mythology. And both these are being taught in these business books which are supposedly rational. And I said, wait a minute, this is not rational. This is a structure. And if you study mythology, there's something called structuralism. When you study literature, when you study art, you will understand there's something called everything that you see has a structure. And it's a way of looking at things. And I suddenly saw structure in management. So that is the structure that is taught in all the IIMs, all the business schools in India. A structure which reflects biblical structure, Greek structure. And I said, okay, where is the Indian structure? Where is the Chinese structure? What is the Chinese structure? What is the Indian? Nobody knew. They said, oh, come on, management is like this only. And that's typically how a person who believes in something believes. He believes the alternate cannot exist. And suddenly you realize a vast body of knowledge is being ignored and sidelined and even dismissed. Oh, come on, how can it be? How can there be knowledge here? Let's talk about India. If you look at the history of India before the 15th century, we were a source of luxury goods. We made luxury items, primarily textiles. People wanted, it's not spices as much as textiles which made India. Spices came from Southeast Asia. People in Southeast Asia would only give spices if they got Indian textiles. So what the traders would do, they would come to India, buy textile, and then go to Southeast Asia, take spices from there, and take the spices to Europe and America. Europe primarily. What did Indians want? They only wanted gold. Only gold. Indians wanted nothing from the rest of the world. Only gold, to the point that when you read Roman documents from the 10th century AD, you have the senators complaining, that the exchequer is complaining, that they actually use this phrase, the golden sparrow of India eats all our gold. From there comes the phrase, Sone ki chidiya. That's how the word comes, Sone ki chidiya, because we only wanted gold. Even today, we're the largest consumers of gold. Nobody can explain this rationally. Why are Indians so obsessed with gold? But that's how the balance, that's how India was in the 16th century. We were rural communities, we made gold, we wanted gold, and we made fabric, fantastic fabric. Then something interesting happened in the 16th century. The Industrial Revolution took place. With the Industrial Revolution, what happens? India is no longer required as a source of luxury goods. India becomes a source of raw materials, which means all indigenous industries are going to be destroyed. All industry is going to be destroyed, every land. Now, how do I get the farmers to grow the crop that I want, the cotton that I want? I have to control that land, and therefore colonialism becomes necessary for industry. So the colonies are formed, the corporation comes into being, which came primarily to trade, suddenly needed to control the land to decide what crop should be grown to feed the factories in Europe. But something is forgotten over here. The Queen of England said, I'm not going to fund your exercise. You need investment, right? You can't start business without investments. Find your own funding. So what did the corporation do? They said, you know what? We have to grow a crop which will give us a lot of cash. What was that crop? It was opium. So suddenly farmers are being asked, you get a good price if you buy opium, if you grow opium. Now what happens when you grow opium instead of food? There is going to be drought. People are going to die. Where does this opium go? It goes to China. Who are the traders? Indian traders. Some of the most reputed houses in India. I'm telling you this for a reason. That money funds capital in India also. It builds the city of Bombay. It builds some of the most magnificent buildings we know in India. It comes from the opium trade. The Chinese have never forgotten it. The anger is still there. It's our opium that went to China. It's our traders who took it there. Opium brought money, and suddenly the cotton mills started. That's how Bombay has cotton mills. So the opium traders became cotton mills. Now look what is happening to the economy because of this. The industry has been wiped out. Farming has been wiped out. Drought is taking place, all to feed businesses in Europe. And then suddenly we talk about, because money flows in, people start talking in Europe, a new thing happens. With the Industrial Revolution comes who will have share of wealth. And if you look carefully at the history of the world wars, it is because everybody wanted to control the colonies. The World War takes place, people go to fight and kill each other, and suddenly something interesting happens. Because all the men are in battlefield, the women suddenly have to go to the factories to work. And suddenly, women's rights become important, because once the husbands come back, they say, now go back home. And the women say, we will not go back home. We are quite capable of managing. We demand equal representation. So human rights emerges because of enterprise, which leads to war, which leads to the collapse of the social structure. Once rights come in, suddenly national rights come in. Freedom struggles take place. Ideas emerge. A new furnace happens. And you have the nation state being born. When the British left India, one of the reasons, and perhaps it's a cynical reason, is because the balance of payment was no longer in their favor. And they were still claiming money for the 1857 uprising. So the balance of payment, anybody who's an economist, read it. Why am I talking about this? Business does not exist in a vacuum. It exists in an ecosystem. Entrepreneurship does not exist in a vacuum. While there is great glory in entrepreneurship and the notion of entrepreneurship, please understand, does not exist in a vacuum. It exists in a social context. It exists in an economic context. It exists in a political context. The world is very different from the world which existed 10 years ago. And by the time you start your businesses in a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, the world will be dramatically different. If you're not sensitive to it, you may perhaps not succeed as you would like to succeed. So coming back to mythology. So India had businesses till the 14th century. There were traders, very good traders. Interestingly, after 10th century, we stopped trading. We preferred manufacturing and we left the trading to the Arabs. A reason we have not really understood why. People have not figured out why it is. Where was the knowledge of these traders? How did they do business? What was their notion of entrepreneurship? And I started asking this question. I started seeing patterns in Indian storytelling. So my purpose was, let me go study Indian stories, see a pattern. Is it possible to see a pattern and then pull that pattern out and then create a model, a framework? And I was hoping in this session to show you the book, but the book is only going to come out in March. I've been writing about this for a long time. I have essays on it. But that's fundamentally what I have been doing with Kishorji, because he funded me in a way. He allowed me time to think, to structure this, to explain this. And it's a fairly complex thing. Because remember, you have to make a journey from modern management to Western mythology, to Indian mythology, to Indian management. So it's going not only geographically across, it's going across space, time, and stories. So let me give you an example of an Indian storytelling. And you tell me what is appropriate or not. So, when you read biblical stories, the primary, what's called a leitmotif, the dominant principle of biblical storytelling is the question of the prophet holding the commandments and telling, align to these rules. These are rules, align to them. And the entire book, struggle of man to keep up the rules which have come down from God in writing. It's all about compliance, struggling to comply, comply, comply. And then you read Greek mythology. Now let me give you an example of Greek mythology. From Greek mythology comes the Olympic Games. What is Olympic Games all about? It is about breaking records. It's about transgression. It's about being better than others. It's not about compliance. It's about defiance. It's about breaking the rules. It's about innovating. So on one side, you have a biblical narrative which talks about compliance, compliance, compliance. On the other side, you have Greek stories which talk about defiance, defiance, defiance. So words like subversive, words like radical thinking, out of the box, change the rules of the game. These are all Greek in thinking. Now which is better, rule following or rule breaking? How many believe rule following is good? Okay. How many feel rule breaking is good? Okay. So imagine this. Now this is a hypothetical, of course. I'm a storyteller, I live in imagination. So let's imagine this probability. The Greek hero comes along with the biblical prophet to India. And he asks Indian, what is better? Like I asked IIT people. But the answer that you gave me was so not Indian. What's an Indian answer? What's a correct Indian? Dil ko chhu ke bolo. What is the body language? Since I can't speak Greek or Hebrew. So tell me without body language, what will you do? Come on. Shake your head. Do it. This is called the famous Indian head shake. Ye bhi chalega, wo bhi chalega. Kabhi khatta, kabhi meetha. I like chicken, I like rice, I'll make biryani. I like masala, I like noodles, I'll make masala noodles. We will mix and match. So you have Maryada Purushottam Ram, rule following, Ramayana, and Leela Purushottam Krishna. Who is better? Who is better? Paap lagega. You see, you know what the Indian will say? What's the difference? Both are Vishnu. Try explaining this to Europe and America. But of course, Indians love to make things complicated. So we shall go further. Now this is slightly more technical. Just trust me on this one, because some people stand up and say, no sir, I don't agree with you. Don't agree with me, it's fine. Just indulge me for some time. The hero of the Ramayana is Maryada Purushottam Ram. The villain of the Ramayana is Ravan, who lives by his own rules. So I don't care for your rules. What Maryada nonsense? My rules. Meri patni, teri patni, meri patni. In business parlance, it's called a hostile takeover. And then you go to the Mahabharata. The hero is rule-breaking Krishna. So who's the villain? The rule-following Duryodhan. Now, what is rule-following Duryodhan? Now let me explain in corporate terms. I don't know how many of you all actually, how many of anybody, I forget. But you go to office on time because you have to swipe your card, and you leave on time because you have to swipe your card. What do you do all day? You play solitaire. But the records say you come on time and you go on time, to tum theek ho. Rules have been followed, compliant, because as per database, sir, he comes on time, goes on time. Hindi mein isko bagula bhagat kehte hain. The pretender. He who pretends to follow the rules. So all those people who fall at the feet of their parents and say, kitna acha ladka hai. And you know what he does. Haven't we met these guys? That's Duryodhan. He pretends. Now look at this. So we'll create a 2 by 2 matrix. We must, no? Otherwise it's not management. So what do you have? So you have x-axis, y-axis. X-axis is behavior, that which is tangible. Rule following, rule breaking. You can measure it. Rule following, rule breaking. So now what do you have on the rule breaking side? You have Krishna and Ravan. And rule following side you have Ram and Duryodhan. How will you figure out the difference? Because everybody who breaks the rule will say, I am Krishna. Ask the boss. Duryodhan hai, chant sala. And everybody who follows the rules is convinced. You know, everybody who breaks the rule thinks that he is Krishna. But as far as the management is concerned, it is Ravan. And anybody who follows the rules thinks he is Ram, but the boss thinks he is Duryodhan. You know, the technical management word for Duryodhan is a professional. So when anybody said you need to have professionals in your organizations, be careful. Juwa mat khelna. So now you have a 2 by 2 axis. The x-axis is clear. What's the y-axis? If I do an x-axis with behavior, which I can measure, measurable, therefore manageable, what is your y-axis? How do I know the person in front of me is Ram or Duryodhan? How do I know that the person in front of me is Krishna or Ravan? Behaviorally, they are absolutely alike. There is no difference in data point. You will never be able to know the difference. But there is something in the y-axis because we know they are different. We know it. What's the y-axis? And that y-axis is India's offering to the world. This is what we talk about. Not everything in life is measurable. Some things in life are not measurable. What can be measured is saguna, tangible, saguna, can be measured. What can't be measured is nirguna, that which can't be measured, but you can feel it, sense it, but you cannot measure it. No certification possible. But you believe it, you trust it, your feelings. हिंदी में इसको भाव कहते हैं. Bhav matters. You feel he is the right guy for the job. You're not sure, the data shows okay, but you feel it's right. You feel he's the right person. And that axis is not part of modern management. It's not there. It doesn't exist because we are so busy being professional. Professional is cut out your emotions. So you basically dehumanize the organization altogether. So when you join the company, as the gentleman earlier said, for the rest of your life you'll be told be professional, be professional, be professional, cut out your emotions. Emotions are for Saturday and Sunday. And at the end of your career, 30 years later, when you become the CEO, they'll say, do corporate social responsibility. तो अभावग्रस्त, नीरस यजमान को आप बोल रहे हो दान करो. And that's the statement which we see. So when I see these, I mean, I'm very uncomfortable with these words like corporate social responsibility. Because अगर भाव नहीं है तो मत करो, it's behavioral. Everything is behavioral. तो कितना charity दिया, कितना check दिया. So you just see, oh, Duryodhan, 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 Duryodhan. Trust me, because the nature of my work allows me to work with some of the very powerful people in India, some of the richest people in India. and you don't want to know the backroom conversations. You see it, but that's not data, no? That's not measurable. That's media reporting. Nobody takes that seriously. But this y-axis is what we talk about. And honestly, human civilization, not just India, all over the world, feelings matter. Somewhere along the line, we have been told, cut this out. Be ruthless. Look at the language of management. It's so violent. You have the, today, corporate dossier yesterday, art of war. Winning. Somebody is being defeated, right? No, win-win situation. Somebody is being defeated. Let me explain it to you. You cannot have the East India Company unless you grow opium. Somebody has to die. अगर भोग चाहिए तो बलि देना पड़ेगा. Somebody has to die. You want metal, you want India's GDP to rise, you need steel. At a very fundamental level, where does steel exist? Under the earth, which means you have to mine. If you don't, when you mine, what happens to the environment? Somebody has got to go. There will be land displacement. People will be removed from homes. At the very least, animals and plants will suffer. You can't escape it. Business is violence, whether you like it or not. Something that we forget. In the Mahabharata, Yudhishthir goes to Krishna and says, I have inherited this forest called Khandaprastha. So Krishna says, what do you want to do with it? He says, I want to build a city called Indraprasth. So Krishna says, Acha, to jungle jala do. Burn the forest, kill every bird and animal, every bee, every butterfly in this forest. और अपना अधिपत्य जमाओ. ये तुम्हारी ज़मीन है. And Yudhishthira says, my God, I don't want to do this. He said, then don't think of Indraprasth. How can you have a city without destroying nature? But he says, paap lagega. Paap lagega. There is no escape. If you want Indraprasth, the snakes have to die. And the snakes will come back for revenge. Somewhere the other, the people who have taken opium for you, whose ancestors have been destroyed, will not forgive you. 1 generation, two, what's your line of sight? 100 years, 200 years, 300, what's your line of sight? It's not forgotten. That's called karma. For every action, there is a reaction. You have to pay the price, or don't do the yajna. Don't light the fire. Live in the forest happily. But you don't. You want the field. You want the enterprise. The agricultural revolution wipes out the tribal lifestyle. The agricultural revolution, I'm talking about 10,000 years ago. It stops nomadic people from traveling because agar ye mera khet hai, tumhare mabeshi, your cattle cannot come in. And suddenly property rights come in. So something's got to go, freedom goes away. Industrial revolution will destroy indigenous cotton industries. It will go. Bali dena padega. You can't escape it. The moment you have Facebook, Orkut has to die. Something's got to go. You can't coexist in a win-win situation. Nahi hota hai. So look at the language we use in management. Grab market share. Develop market. Why is India so attractive? Because hum bazaar hai. We are customers, not because people love us. We are customers, paying customers. Therefore we matter. We didn't matter in the 1970s when people sent us grain which was meant for cattle to eat. We matter today because we are paying customers. Bhulo mat. So at a fundamental level, entrepreneurship is business, and business is about establishing Indraprasth. You have to establish the city. You have to establish. You want to start a SEZ, You have to take land, simple land. Land means people will be displaced. I live in this apartment block in, which is this fancy apartment on top, and my friends came and said, oh my God, now all this greenery will go away because builders have come. I said, my building is also built on something. At one time there were meadows, bees and butterflies over here. Now we have a fantastic building in which I am staying. Something went. Bali dena padega. Or you say, no, let's not have buildings. Let's live in caves. Why not? I'm sure somebody is rational enough to argue it out. But the fact is, I love my air conditioning. I love my marble. I love my car, which means I'm going to take resources from the earth. I am going to do it. And that's why in India, business is yajna. यज्ञ का मतलब क्या? खांडव प्रस्थ को जला के इंद्रप्रस्थ को निर्माण करना. जिगर है, are you capable of it? Then get into business. It means you will take ruthless decisions. And you have to ask yourself, this is where belief comes in my title. क्यों कर रहे हो? Why are you doing business? And that's the y-axis. Because I can never objectively know why you are doing the business. Why are you building Indraprasth? किसके लिए कर रहे हो? Ravan is a king, Ram is a king, Krishna is a king, Duryodhana is a king. All four are kings. Why are two worshipped and two not? What is the idea? Why are some considered heroes, some considered villains? What's the y-axis? And that's the point which comes down to, why do you want to start a business? For whom? Kiske liye? Ask this very fundamental question. Why do you want to start the business? Because business exists in an ecosystem. You will give employment to a large number of people. 50% of India is going to be less than 30 in the next 40 years or something of that sort. I'm hearing these statistics all the time. They need jobs. If you don't start Indraprasth, if you don't start enterprise, where will they go? And what happens to people when they don't have jobs? So in building businesses, you're ensuring social stability. Industry cannot be separated from society. तुम नौकरी दोगे, घर में चूल्हे जलेंगे. That is what industry and enterprise does. But the price is the forest has to be burnt. But you need to do it. You need to establish it. So ask yourself, किसके लिए कर रहे हो? यज्ञ किसके लिए कर रहे हो? Who is the reason? Are you doing it because you want to feel superior to others? That you are taking up a job, every day you have to report to boss. I don't report to anyone. Trust me, no businessman can say that really, because there's an investor looking at him and saying ROI. So there's no escape. There is no such thing as freedom. That one day I'll have my freedom and I'll dance, and no, it doesn't happen. It will never happen. Trust me, I'm 40. I really thought I'd be free by now. I'm not. ऋण से मुक्त नहीं हो सकोगे. There'll always be a debt you have to repay. Either from the bank or from the angel investor, they will ask your pound of flesh. But why do you do it? That's where the joy comes from. Because of you, the customer will be happy. Because of you, the employees will be happy because they have a job. Because of you, vendors will be happy because they have a place to sell their products. Because of you, a market will start. Buying and selling will take place. Exchange will take place. At the fundamental level, you will solve so many problems. At a very fundamental level. And that's the question I want to leave you back with. Ask yourself that, do you want to be a businessman because of Ravan? Do you want to be the Ravan who lives by his own rules? Or Ram who says, I'm willing to sacrifice personal freedom for the happiness of the community? These are extreme points, but just look at the extreme outliers, and somewhere in between we lie. Why does Krishna do the Rasa Leela? For his pleasure or for the pleasure of the other? Kiske liye kar rahe ho tum? And that's the question. When you answer this question, suddenly your business has a different flavor. Ek bhav aata hai. For whom are you doing it? I'll conclude this with one story, which is a very fundamental story. I feel that people who, any job, not just entrepreneurs, need to hear, and it's a very children's story really, but I found great wisdom in children's story. Valmiki writes the Ramayana. So translate in your head, entrepreneur creates enterprise. Valmiki writes the Ramayana and shows it to everyone, and everyone says, "Bahut acha hai, bahut acha, very good, very good, very good, Fortune 100. You're the richest man in the world, so you have a golden commode." Yeah, that's aspiration. You've written Ramayana, and suddenly Narad comes and says, "Bahut acha likha hai, but someone has written a better Ramayana than you." And you're like, "Who?" "You are ranked 4, he is ranked 1. Hanuman has written another Ramayana." So he says, "That monkey?" He says, "Yes." So he goes quickly and meets Hanuman and says, show me your business plan." And so Hanuman shows his Ramayana, it's written on a banana leaf, and he reads it. And when he reads it, he starts to cry. And Hanuman says, "Is it so bad?" He says, "No, it's outstanding. The vocabulary is brilliant, the grammar is brilliant, the melody is brilliant, the meter is brilliant. It's an outstanding piece of work." So Hanuman says, "Why are you crying?" He says, "After reading your Ramayana, nobody is going to read my Ramayana. Hanuman's Ramayana is so much better than Valmiki Ramayana." So Hanuman says, "Oh, is that so?" He takes the banana leaf, tears it, crushes it, pops it in his mouth and swallows it, and burps in satisfaction. And Valmiki says, "What have you done? You have destroyed the Hanuman Ramayana. Nobody will ever read the Hanuman Ramayana." He says, "Yes, but Valmiki, you need your Ramayana more than I need my Ramayana. You wrote the Ramayana so the world will remember Valmiki. I wrote the Ramayana because I wanted to discover Ram. Ask yourself, why do you want to start the enterprise? To be famous like Mark Zuckerberg? Or but because you have found what makes you human? And I hope you find your Ram." Thank you.
Let the claps keep on roaring. Come on, a huge round of applause. Can we have a standing ovation, everybody? So if you don't mind, we would go ahead with a few questions. Any specific numbers, please tell me, because there are going to be a lot from the audience. So, all right, you at the back, right? Okay, number 2, 3, 4. As of now, just keep it to 4.
So great learning. Actually a great, we explored different perspectives, that is what I can say. Similar,
No, hold it next to you.
Similar, yeah. So we are working on a project which is empowering the education system.
Yes.
So can you guide us with a similar thing for education, as in relating what is good for Indian perspective for the education system?
See, the Indian perspective of education system basically says, "Khana mat banao, bhook padhao," which basically means don't create so much content, create curiosity. If I don't want to study, what's the point of a library? You know? So the point is to provoke thinking, to make a person want to study. That's the primary challenge, not creating a library. So,
thank you, sir.
All right. The gentleman in the stripe.
Good evening, sir. I'm from MIT Pune. I would like to know your views on this question. Like, what do you think, that entrepreneurs are born or made?
what do you think the Indian answer will be?
Your views?
See, I have seen entrepreneurship at different levels, and depends on what you define by entrepreneurship. For me, entrepreneurship at a fundamental level is proactivity. someone who takes a proactive decision, right? So I have seen in a factory somebody coming and saying that I want to start a Satyanarayan Puja. For me, that gentleman who takes the initiative is an entrepreneur. Because now, when I see, Ganpati Pandals, which is happening in Bombay, that's when I see entrepreneurship. Young boys who perhaps work, unemployed, I don't know what they do, but suddenly they come together, they have the energy to collect money, to set it up, to get the Ganpati, to do the whole thing. That requires mindset. I'd like to harness that energy. Not everybody can do it. Some people can do it. And that's your talent. That's your talent pool. And if you don't invest in that talent pool, they are going to get spoiled. So now, are they entrepreneurs in the technical sense of the word? Maybe, maybe not. But for me, that's entrepreneurship.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, sir. Sir, some 7 months back, I got to watch a video of yours, The Myths That Mystify. And the talks in that had inspired me. I listen to it every day and I almost learned it by heart. So for now, I do not have a question for you, but then I always thought when I watched your video first time that one day I'll meet this man. And thanks to IIT that I got a chance to meet you very soon. Sir, I have bought a book of my Gurudev, Shri Ramakrishna Kshirsakar Maharaj, for you. So kindly allow me to present it to you, sir. Please.
Later.
Thank you, sir.
Could we have one more question? And are there?
Good evening, sir. So I keep following a business sutra.
Yeah.
There you once said, you made a comparison between Vishnu and Indra. Indra is one who goes behind power, and Vishnu has the power because he's secure. So as an entrepreneur, I've got my own business where if I want to go from a business of 50 crores to 100 crores,
yes,
I'm acting as Indra, going behind money.
Yes. How do I become Vishnu?
You said if you want money, you should be secure.
Let me explain what
So
it
can
means.
can I be secure at the same time and have money? Can I be Indra and can I be Vishnu at the same time?
So biryani, no? See, it's a very simple management principle. Indra runs after the customer, Vishnu attracts the customer. That's the theory. How do you attract the customer? That's the principle. How do you attract the investment banker to fund your project? Kiska darshan karte ho when you're making a business plan? When you're making a business plan, trust me, 90% of the people have great ideas which nobody wants. And that's the whole thing. Kiska bhook mitana chahte ho tum? What is it that when I create, that people will come to it naturally? That's Vishnu Charitra. Not I have to run after the customer. The customer has to run after me, which demands continuous qualitative improvement. Because every time I'm better and better, and it happens, right? An Apple product, the people are standing in line before it. What is it that they are doing right that seduces the customer? What is it that they did wrong that Samsung could appear? So भूख मिटा रहे हैं, तो भोग के लिए भूख चाहिए. और भूख कहां से आता है? भय से आता है. Some fear that you are addressing. So that's the method in management. And it's really Peter, if you read, not Peter Drucker, but if you read any management textbook, they'll always show customer insight. That's what I'm saying. It's just that I'm saying it in flowery language. Because it's very difficult. Trust me, I've seen many business plans and I see these fantastic ideas and I keep asking, who is your customer? And there's no answer. Who should remove the wallet, remove money from the wallet, put it on the table for your product? If you don't have an answer to that question, you can't give me return on investment, don't get into business. I need return on investment. गाय है तो दूध देना है, अगर दूध है तो उसमें मक्खन होना चाहिए, मक्खन है तो घी होना चाहिए. Otherwise, don't think about entrepreneurship. You have, and that's Vishnu Charitra, because he plays the flute and the cows come to him.
So I should focus on the product rather than the balance sheet.
Yeah, no, basic common sense, no.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll go ahead with you questioning.
Hi, Ki. I have a question is like in Indian, normally in the corporate world, a lot of weightage is given to education, your degree,
Yes.
and which university you are from, which
Yes.
college you are from.
Yes.
So as a big corporation, is there any, or what do you say, is any strategy or to harness the talent outside the education system within the society? In India, especially where they do not get the education, but still the talent and the vibrant.
See, if I'm really wanting to do business, your certificates don't matter. If you really want to do business, certificates are only an indicator. It's just an indicator. A simple thing. If you have entered IIT, that means you have crossed certain barriers, because the exams are so tough, so much of filtering has happened that I expect a certain level. So I don't think so much. So it's a good filter. It doesn't mean you are good. It just means you have been filtered. So if I come from I am Lucknow, I am Bangalore, I am Ahmedabad, it is a filtering criteria. It's a great filtering criteria, foot in the door, the step one, your first job. It doesn't mean you are good. Please remember that. If you keep this principle in mind, that certifications are valuable, it's not that they are not valuable, it allows me foot in the door, you'll be picked up by the right guys. But whether you will grow in your career is not really a certification. It's your mind, how you think, how you function, your interpersonal relationships, which is not taught in any university.
So my question is like big corporate, like Future Group. So what are the initiatives they are taking to go beyond the educational system or looking for the talent within the educational system and inspire them or nurture them?
See, ask yourself, when the Future Group started, we wanted store managers who will handle 200 people in a store and whose turnover per day could go as high as 100 crores. Where will you find such talent in India? Was there a precedence? So you hire Tukka. You just throw, target, let's try, I like him. And you play with it. You have certain criteria, you think this fellow seems good. You take risks, it's a calculated risk that you're taking. You're never sure that he'll succeed. So you look at me, I'm a medical doctor. So I'm outside the medical system, education system in a way, what I'm doing right now. I'm not an MBA. So see, they picked me up.
Yep. Thank you.
Could we have one question from the gentleman at the back, if you could stand up? I know there are many hands, I just have to pick.
I'm okay. Yeah.
Check. Say hi. No, wait.
Yeah,
That was
I
funny.
can hear you now.
No problem. First of all, thank you so much for your valuable insights. This is something which is really very, I would say, helpful thing that you've shared with us. I think most of your life experiences. So first of all, thank you for that. And the question comes now. It says, see, you have seen things from a different angle. You've seen the world from a different angle, as I could say. So for India, looking at India and looking at the entrepreneurship in India, what according to you would be the futuristic business or prospects that we have in India, what entrepreneurship we're looking at?
Well, it would be things that will, for me, what matters is businesses which give larger employment. Because that's a very practical need of the country. Otherwise, we're going to have a serious problem in 20 years' time. So when you all will be 40, you will have, at my, so that, no, you have to work in, I feel, spaces that work with India 2, in what is called India 2, India 3. These are the markets which are being ignored, and really that's where a lot of the best businesses are happening. Ideas that are coming, that are reaching out to, and they're working because of internet and because of the new technologies. It's now very easy, and it's not easy, but it's interesting. There are models that can appear that can work at different levels, and there are people who are willing to fund such enterprises. that enable, just visualize a district, just take a district in Maharashtra and say, okay, that district, if I can handle, give jobs to 500 people in the next 5 years. Now that's fantastic.
If you could be more specific, like what ventures or what can we think?
He wants to extract.
I'll tell you the consulting charges, meet me outside.
Anyways, thank you.
Sir, first of all, congratulations. It was a new paradigm for me to look at this management. My simple question to you is, sir, are you trying to evolve a parallel mythology-based system for Western management, or your objective is to create something new, some new models?
See, why is the model necessary? We are talking about a global village. When you're talking about a global village, you have to take into consideration everybody's point of view. Currently, the business models don't take everyone's point of view into consideration. They don't. So when you study, it's a deeper subject. When you study why recession takes place, why is there so much debt in the market, what is going wrong, why are children in India coming from traditional business families all want to start .coms? What is happening in the business space? You suddenly realize that there is only one point of view that is becoming propagating and dominant, and that's very dangerous. In any part of the world, when one view tries to dominate, it will be destroyed. It will create destruction. It will create problems, and that's what we're seeing now. That's why the world is changing dramatically, and nobody is able to pinpoint. They don't realize it's coming from these business models, which are so linear, which don't take into consideration the fact, they don't take the violence of business into consideration, for example. They just don't, because your line of sight is 50 years, 100 years, not 200 years, 500 years. So it is necessary, or I think it's to share with the world different models, which look at the same thing very differently. And I think that's important. I think India has such a vast treasure house of knowledge. If we don't share it with the world, I think that's unfair, no?
Could we have one more question? Three
think
more
this gentleman
questions.
over
Okay.
here, I'll request, because I've been seeing this. I'm now feeling almost guilty. So.
Good evening. I'm from LIC of India. The question I wanted to ask is, because you said that you went over Indian mythology.
Yes.
The two oldest cultures which exist, we are thankful we have Tamil culture. It is
Yes.
the oldest in India,
Yes.
written history with written language.
Yes.
So have you gone through Tamil? And then, since because you're talking about Asia, have you gone through Chinese literature?
You see,
Because we have worked a lot.
Yes.
So this is what I
I'll
wanted
give you an example. See, language doesn't matter. It is,
Yeah.
when you're looking at stories, it's a method, and it's a technique. If there was a technical session, I'd explain how it works. You look at dominant storytelling.
Okay.
And you look at storytelling patterns. So, for example, you can just look at Bollywood and understand storytelling pattern. Let me give you an example. 1950s stories, who is the hero? Balraj Sahni.
Yes.
2000, Salman Khan. That means the world has changed. Balraj Sahni would not remove his shirt. He wouldn't do jiggling. Doesn't happen. In the 1970s, there were films which talked about smuggler.
Yes.
There is no smuggler in modern films anymore. The vamp used to do item numbers. Now the heroine wants to do the item number. Which means society is changing and storytelling reflects that pattern. In the same way, when you see Tamil stories and classical Tamil stories, but remember, you can't isolate classical Tamil completely other than Manimegalai and Shilapadikaram. Chinese stories like that. So it's a topic by itself. It's a very long topic and we don't have that time. But if you see, for example, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, when you see hero, you will see the structure of storytelling is very different from, say, Matrix or Indiana Jones, or so that's how it is.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Huge round of applause.